Hey guys, so Dirtpatcheaven here, and today I have one of my best friends in the world. This is Trish from Just So Trish. You guys will recognize her because she did the homeschool co-op with John, and then now she's doing her own on her own channel. That's a real homeschool co-op. She's doing amazing things over there. She has super short hair, so we were trying to think how to get the braid girl theme in. We were like, should we do cornrows? And so she's very crafty, and so she has her own beautiful long Elsa braid today. I love her sense of humor. Now, Trish amazes me. She has 6 kids. Did I get the number right?
It's 6.
Yeah, and she is doing a Fitbit challenge right now. She's doing homeschool co-ops. She is homeschooling herself, and this isn't all that she is, though. She started out as a very professional businesswoman. She's extremely well educated, and I love our conversations because she's nothing short of like this research fiend. And she has a whole, the reason that we're talking about this topic today is that she is such a go-getter, and she's been watching my channel for a while, and she sees that we homestead, but she's in a completely different situation than I am as far as why we would homestead. And she's come to a kind of a conclusion that maybe there's situations where it's a lot healthier financially and emotionally, spiritually, and for your family not to homestead and instead to rely on other people to raise your food. So Trish, you tell us about yourself, about your background, and then we were going to go. Yes, go for it.
All right, sorry. So for those that don't actually know me, I will say Julie has been a subscriber of mine since really the beginning of my channel. So I always feel like, and it was her homeschooling video that I was like, hey, I like you, that really brought me to Julie. My background is about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I came home from working. And I have a bachelor's and master's degree in engineering. And it's actually environmental engineering with a whole focus on sustainability and life cycle analysis. So I was green as they were coining the phrase going green, big time. And really my background, my degree and my research was in septic tanks. So I'm a master turd herder for truth. And I do feel special because I'm on Braid Girls, and to be honest, I don't have much hair at all. And I feel like I'm the first acrylic braid on the show, so I feel really special. I feel a little bit like a unicorn farting glitter, to be honest. So I have to say, I've had a hard time. I've had a little bit of backlash on my own channel because I have chickens. I have deep mulch gardening. I cook from scratch. I live on 10 acres. You know, very much in that orient, but I will not call myself a homesteader. And I've done videos where I do call outs to you, and I'm like, I don't call myself a homesteader. I don't dare. And I've had people that are like, but I'm a homesteader and I don't do nearly what you do. You know, you're taking my value. And the reality is I've thought of myself as something much different for many years, but I've never really put it into work, made it public. And what it is I call myself old school. I go old school about things. And, you know, I love Esther at Fetch a Much, but Sister's old school about 200 years. I'm very much more interested in a more modern old school, which is only about 60 years back, and sticking to just living simply so I can simply live.
Well, and we were talking the other day, I think the reason we were talking about this is you live in Florida. And so you were talking about the abundance of produce there. Like for me to try and find that kind of abundance in produce here for a price that I can afford, everything has to be shipped here. If we want organic greens, if we want organic fruit, it has to be shipped to us. It costs a lot of fuel miles. And not only that, it has a tendency to be very hard and green and not beautiful, lovely food you want to eat. But in Florida, tell me how much you bought those tomatoes for, because you were telling me about canning tomatoes.
So in Florida here, I will can tomatoes about once or twice a year. And I will typically can enough for a little over 8 months worth of canning. So that's about 150 pounds of tomatoes I will do at a time. I will buy them when the price is $5 for a 25-pound box.
It never gets that here.
20 cents a pound. And I'm not buying the number ones, you know, the fancy number ones. I'm typically buying the seconds. It would cost more to buy the number ones, but I don't need the number ones. And I know what you're getting because I have friends who work for the farming industry, and their goal is to pick and harvest the hardest green tomato you can get so that it can hit the ground and not bruise. That's the goal. Sorry, I have somebody who's joining in with me. And that's their goal. But I mean, I bought a box of acorn squash for $6. I can buy bushels of sweet corn. Now, it's not dent corn to make flour out of. It's sweet corn. And I can buy that at the end of the season for $10. Cucumbers for $5 a box. So my goal, and has always been that I've done this for years now, is as the season ends and the prices drop, I go and I buy what I need to fill my pantry. And in the past, I've been accused of being a prepper. And I'm like, I'm not really a prepper. This is just what this is what was normal. This was what was normal 50 years ago. You know, you would have a garden to supplement, but you would use what was, the end of season. One of the really neat things here in Florida that has changed a lot is the actual agriculture process. We now have a viable peach that can be grown here. And in the area, I picked peaches for 99 cents a pound, and they were just as wonderful as a Georgia peach. Yeah. And that was not a reality 4 years ago. I mean, this year was the first year they opened to the public. And we got the same thing going with blueberries now.
Well, I think one of the things I really wanted to make sure to cover today, because we were talking about it before, is that there are seasons in your life just like there's seasons on a homestead or seasons in a garden. And you're at a season in your life where you have itty bitty babies and you have 6 of them and you're homeschooling them and you're living on one income. You're well educated. You could go get a job, but putting 6 little kids into daycare would be exceptionally expensive. And so I think that when a lot of people think I'm going to homestead come hell or high water, but the thing is, if you have resources in your area that you believe in, and you have some kind of budget. I mean, there are times when you really just don't have the budget, but homesteading takes money. And so the money that you're putting into homesteading, if that could instead boost your food budget, and because you knew that you could get good local food that was really within your belief system, when you're that burned out and you have little kids and limited budget, do the homesteading that you can, the homesteading that you enjoy, but don't do it at the expense of your food budget if your homestead isn't bringing food in.
Well, we made the move 2 years ago from a half an acre to 10 acres. And you and I had this conversation, and I'm just like, I was more productive when I had that half acre, and I provided more for myself when I had that half acre than I do now. And the reality that I was not prepared for, because I'm thinking, here I do all this stuff. I dehydrate, I'm gardening. I have backyard chickens to the limit the county would let me have. I have eggs, I'm really doing this up. I have rabbits on my half acre. When I go bigger, I'm going to go better. And I have never been as productive as I was on that half acre. Even my canning has suffered because of it. I'm not nearly making, I was making my stuff from scratch. I'm sorry, I have a little guy.
No,
making my stuff. Hold on.
Well,
I was making.
And we were the same way. We were on 1/10 of an acre before this, and my garden fed us all year. We had so much produce on 1/10 of an acre because everything went further, and it wasn't about me having to hike out to the boonies to take care of something. We only had enough to feed ourselves. The money went further, the time went further. I still had time to go for bike rides with my kids. And when we moved to the 1.5 acres, it took 5 years to get it to the point where things didn't just always look like they were dying. And that was 5 years where if I'd stayed on my 1/10 of an acre, I could have just been feeding my family during that time. And we had goats too on 1/10 of an acre. We had 2 goats and 12 chickens, meat rabbits, and ducks. I mean, we also had the garden. I mean, we packed a lot into it. And you could say, well, then you were bringing a lot of feed in for your animals. Like, yeah, but I'm bringing
and
feed.
you can afford it.
Yeah, I had the money to do it because we weren't spending it on developing the homestead.
With ours, our 10 acres, we are 2 years out and we're still fencing it in order to bring things in. And I mean, rehabilitating the soil because it was a citrus grove. And there's all these things that it's like we're only half invested in because of the time and the money it requires. And what I realized 2 years into this idea that I'm going to provide everything for myself is that's unreasonable. What's better is to know my community. And so in my community and being aware of my community, I can find raw milk at $5 a gallon. And you know, that $5 a gallon is so much cheaper in time and effort and money to maintain a dairy cow.
And it supports them. It supports them in doing what they love.
And it does. And there's so many things I can make from scratch on that. In reality, if you go back 60, 70 years, when our society was healthier, the variety wasn't in the grocery store. And if you wanted the cookies, you didn't buy 4 packages of something different there. You made it. And it's getting into finding, you know, and my channel hasn't been too much on it, but hitting the points of finding economic, practical, and creative solutions for life. Because as nice as it is, it's not always practical. And if it's not practical, you can't put it into use.
Yeah. If you don't make it easy for yourself, there's so many people out there where it's the mom trying to do the homesteading because dad's pushing her to, or because they just don't have the time for dad to do it. And if mom's also taking care of kids, it becomes slavery instead of an abundant life. And so I'm really glad we have this conversation we're having right now, because an abundant garden and a few chickens is going to pay you back so much more. There are ways to make money on the land and to do the real farming and everything, but you have to be careful about what land you're on, what's your growing season like, what are the laws about where and when you can grow, trying to get organic certified so you can sell it to people you want to. And if you live, sleep, and breathe farming, then yes, you should go ahead and you should do it. But I believe that you should garden first and do it on a small scale to learn what you're doing and to learn what you're looking for, where you are. And the thing that I love about, like, John Martin Fortier, how do you say his name? The market gardener. He went and apprenticed to people for like 5 years with his family. He went and apprenticed to other farmers who were doing it and making lots of money doing it. And he was an apprentice for 5 years before he ever started to look into buying his own property. And so for those out there who are thinking they're going to go homestead and make money or even be able to produce everything they can, you can only excel at so many things without having more hands to be able to help you.
And it comes down to a time thing. You know, you only have so much time. And, you know, granted, that 10 acres out here, I could go bust 40, 50 hours a week, but in my season, that's not practical, nor is it a good use of being a good steward of my time when my children are small. And I wish I would have had more of that mentality coming here to kind of get my expectations in check.
It's true. And there are a lot of resources out there now that will help someone who is really hardcore and serious about the homesteading. There's things like the Woofer program. There's things like YouTube or Etsy, but it all comes down to time and what season you're in. What you can't sit down and not make a list. You have to make a list. What is the most important to me in my season right now? For me, it's becoming more and more that my kids have time to go play in the grass with the goats, that I have time to go make dinner. And so even though I have other things on my homestead that allow me to make money, I really have to weigh them carefully in the balance against, did I get dinner on? If I didn't get dinner on, I'm not being a true disciple.
Well, here's the thing that it comes down to. What is your priority? What is your goal? You know, in my world, in my life, my goal is eating good food. You know, I'm not a whole fooder, but I believe in eating good food 80% of the time, you know, and so how do I go about that? Well, one is getting the good food. And I could go all the way to the beginning that says, I'm going to get the seeds that's from a rare seed catalog. I'm going to spend the time growing it, and I'm going to harvest it, and now I'm going to prepare it, and now I'm going to make a meal. But ultimately, is my goal to grow organic food, or is my true purpose to eat good food? And I want, you know, that's my goal. I have to prioritize what is my purpose and not get caught up in being consumed in trying to produce it and never actually have my purpose of actually eating it and living with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes we kind of get, and that's a whole horse before the cart thing. And you kind of get caught up in this idea, in this movement of I'm a homesteader. And I'm a little bit like, wait a minute, let's back that up. Maybe there's a movement we're not realizing we're really in, and it's just we're old school. We just want to live simply so we can simply live, and we can do it healthy and energetically with relationships and not get bombarded in technology, but see the tool that technology gives us.
Well, and I agree with that 100%. And for me, I think it comes down so much to what is your location. Like, for instance, here, our farmers market doesn't open until the middle of July because our frost date here is in June. And so it takes that long for anything to really come on that is profitable for the farmers around here to grow. Now, in Idaho Falls, we do have a farmers market that opens in May. But you don't really hit your glut until well into June. And so for me being a homesteader and living where I do was 100% essential because I couldn't get good goat's milk. I had tried to buy goat's milk from people in the area and it tasted disgusting. It was so gross. I couldn't find anybody that wasn't feeding corn to their beef. I couldn't find greens that weren't 100% sprayed or costing $6 a head. And so for us, I did move hell or high water in order. We did the Kickstarter to get the greenhouse because and yet I knew that even with the greenhouse, it wouldn't be warm enough to be able to produce our own food. And so I went and did some more research and I found the hotbeds. Oh, with the hotbeds, now the greenhouse works, but I still had to put in a row garden. And so I think if you live in an area that's friendlier to gardeners, definitely you need to look around and support people and dabble in finding your niche if you really want to homestead. In Florida, didn't you say that you can grow year round?
You know, I was just thinking about that. I was enjoying watching you putting tomatoes in the ground the other day because I'm laughing. It's too late. They're going to burn up. But Florida has 3 seasons. And right now we're entering the 3rd season, or the summer season. And we typically grow okra. We grow field peas. You know, it's a high protein, high carb, perfect food, especially if you match it with sausage. Anything's perfect food with sausage. And,
right.
But, you know, one of the questions that have really come up in my sharing with the world through YouTube and through social media is, how do I find what you're finding? And I'm so sorry. How do I find what I'm finding? And it really comes down to, it doesn't matter where you're at. I even believe in Idaho, even though Miss Julie wants to listen, but not listen to you, okay? He's like, I'm out of here then. What it comes down to, no matter where you are at, there is farms actively trying to find you, their customer. And you're going to find them by doing a Facebook search. You know, you're going to ask your friends on Facebook. They typically know social media and they're using it. You have to go find them. And when you find them, share them with your friends. So in my area, I have 10, 15 farms that are within an hour away that's easy to get to. And we also have, I believe, 2 or 3 truck markets in the state of Florida. Now they're going to take me 2 or 3 hours to get to, but when I get there, I have everything being produced in the area on a truck, thrown into boxes, and they're selling them in box quantities. It's not 1 or 2 peppers. It's, do you want 25 pounds of peppers or do you want 50 pounds of peppers? You know, you're buying them in large quantity, and you need to find them. Every state has one. And you might have to make a trip, but I only go to the truck markets 3 or 4 times a year. But it fills my pantry. And like, I don't like freezing peppers. I'd rather dehydrate peppers. But I've come up with a venue of meals that I can use with my dehydrated peppers. So it's definitely finding that out. And the other resource you have, and I'm assuming every state has one. I know that Florida does. And it's the extension service that you have with your state. So Florida has the Institute of Food and Agriculture Extension Service through the University of Florida. On there, they actually maintain a listing of all of the major farmers, and not even major, minor farms that are producing to sell through the state. Yeah. And doing that, you can start finding the farms that are near you. And you want to find packing houses. Packing houses are the best. I have one just down the road. We can buy watermelons all day long for $2.
Our problem here in our state is we do have farmers, but we only grow 2 commodities in our area. We grow potatoes and we grow grain, and none of those are available to be harvested. Like you harvest in September or October for potatoes, and you harvest grain in the summer as well. We actually literally do not grow lettuce in our state. We don't grow watermelon. You cannot get apples that are like good and organic unless you drive 12 hours in one direction. And so what we do, what we do is we have people that drive out of state and bring back like truckloads, like that we get orders in at certain times of the year, because our big shortfall in here is we don't grow fresh produce. Our state, unless you are up in northern Idaho, nobody grows anything fresh. Everything is meant to be stored because our season is so short. And we have a lot of BLM land, land that is just desert that you can't grow anything in. And so in our area, it's meat, potatoes, and grain. And so there's a lot of cattle, and there's potatoes, and there's grain. But for things like fruit, like church congregations will get together and make a huge order. Somebody will go up with a huge truck, bring it back, and then people have stuff to can. And so that's why I think that if somebody decides that they are going to homestead, pick your state carefully, because you have fresh, and if you don't grow it yourself in our state, you'll go very, very hungry if or you'll just be living on things that can be stored, things like potatoes or bread or meat, and that's all we grow.
And it comes down, one, it shows you have a niche market if you ever want to get economical.
Exactly.
You have a niche market. But, you know, a lot of times in that case, you are having to spend the time and the money to make it happen.
Yeah.
I know here, like, we have to drive to Georgia for an apple. Yeah. They don't grow, but they're working on a subtropical apple that's going through. And it's kind of one of those, and we talked about this, you know, now, let me put the disclaimer on here. There are people that, yes, are making it happen, that are on small property, that are permaculturing, that are just working their tail off to really bring out a volume of produce to serve their market area, their community. But, you know, there's a reason why agriculture goes big. It's less resources to go big, and it's hard to beat that. One of the things is why I love dehydrating. You know, getting your fresh stuff and dehydrating it out. I don't really like freezing my things. But you definitely need to know where you're going. For us, we can't get grain. We don't grow grain. If you get to the very northern part of Florida, you can grow sorghum, but not down here. Everything rots in the ground. If I tried to plant a thing of grain, it's going to just rot in the ground, and there's not going to be anything there.
Which is why I think you talking about the old-fashioned skills, the traditional living is so important, because it's about knowing what your local resources are and researching. Okay, so I have to drive 5 hours to get it for you. I have to drive 12 hours to buy grain in bulk. But if you do that once every 2 years, and just make sure that you have your bucket stacked up, you don't have to go buy grain every year. You don't have to go buy it every 3 months, as long as you have it in a sealed container so it's not going to rot. These are really down home mama skills, to look at your resources, to know what's going to buy you the most for the least amount of money and the least amount of time, and to have worked through all your systems and to have systems in place. It's so important to be educated.
Well, and it goes back to knowing your community on it. For me, I have a community that is 4th, 5th generation Floridians. There's things they can tell you that you will never read in a book. There are things you can eat that you have no idea you can eat, that's in abundance here. And one of them, my father-in-law always told me, about burying stuff in the sand. A lot of people consider Florida's full of sand, you can't grow anything. Sand has nothing to do with organic matter. Sand is just the size of the soil. Clay, loam, they're different sizes on the way down. You have that background too. It's just soil particle size. It has nothing to do with nutrients. You would be in shock at what grows in sand. And we get a lot of people from up north that come here only to realize, their first idea is you can't grow anything down here. And I'm like, you got no idea. In fact, the common is Midwestern beef only means west of Tallahassee, which is the panhandle of Florida. Most of the beef that everybody's eating that's being raised out Midwest was born in Florida. We are the calving industry because it doesn't take as much to feed them. And when you need them on fresh grass, green grass that you're not growing, we don't bring hay in. We have a couple months that we have to. But it is cheaper to calve in Florida, and those calves are being shipped off to the Midwest to be finished. And so we are a huge cattle industry that, that most of the world doesn't know. We are like the fruit and vegetable basket of the world. We're not the bread basket. We're the fruit and vegetable. And it wasn't until Flagler brought the railroads down to Homestead. Homestead is named Homestead, which is right outside of Miami, because they were growing the world's winter crops and really bringing that was new stuff. That was new technology in the day when they brought the railroads down there, because people were then eating fresh in the winter for the first time ever.
Yeah. Well, I think that what it really comes down to is make a list of the things that are most important in your life. Make a list of the resources you have locally in your area, including your community, including your people. If we didn't know that our church brought in pears in the winter, we wouldn't have anything to can. But because we're connected to our community, we're aware that even though we don't grow it here, there's a way to get it. And I love the idea of kind of meddling with things and trying things on a small scale, because sometimes you find that even if you don't want to be a general homesteader, or if you don't want to be a homeschooler, or if you don't want to be a cook from scratch person, rather than kind of taking what everybody tells you is possible, instead to be able to tinker with things a little bit to find the perfect fit for you.
I think when it comes down to it, I think there's a large, so there's a whole homestead movement. And I think that there's a large population that is in love with the idea of homesteading, but is never going to be a practical lifestyle for them. And I think I'm one of them. We may eventually get into a point where with my 10 acres, I put enough cows on there to get my ag exemption and to have my beef for the year, and that's it. But I think what really comes down to is prioritizing what is your goal, finding ways to use your community to achieve that goal. And maybe you make vacations based on what is in season and what you can go get at the end of season. There's things that don't grow in Florida that grow in Georgia. That's an 8-hour trip. Maybe it's a great weekend to go to Valdosta, Georgia, just so you can buy produce on your way home.
Yeah.
And making your canning based on that. And, that's just ways to live. And it's about finding ways to live simply so you can simply live.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we covered this really well. Is there anything else you want to talk about as far as like shout outs to your own channel or to anybody else that you think would really help kind of with these principles? For me, it's getting books at the library, like saying, this is what I'm fascinated in. Do I really want to do it? Let's go read a book, find out how to do it, live at the library for a while. What about you?
I find YouTube has always been a place of inspiration. One of my most favorite ones has always been Elliot. You know, he is, I've loved him. When I have days where I'm just down, I love watching all the old shows. And you've always been a joy to watch too. I love you. I will say, let me give a shout out to my own channels, of course. A lot of times you'll find on my channel is a lot of homeschooling. And it wasn't necessarily intended to be that, but you know, we have a large group of populations that is done dealing with the Institute of Learning in the way that it's been going. And I've found that the resources just weren't there. And part of the Live Simply and Simply Live in my home is homeschooling. And so I try to provide as much as I can. I am going to be branching out on other practical and economical ways of solutions for life. But in the meantime, building a community of kind of homeschooling in general. So anybody, because I know that when we covered that topic with John, there's a lot of people interested. And what I realized real quick was there is not the information. Just like what you do with the homesteading movement and the ability, I had no idea about how to make yarn. And it has always just, I mean, that is my love, watching you make yarn and seeing what the solutions are there. Because that's just phenomenal as I wear my fake acrylic yarn. And that's what I had. Just realizing just a lack of community there. And so anybody, if your thing is homesteading, if your thing is like maybe actually an idea of going old school, or if your thing is, you know, yarn and knitting, be part of the community and lend your voice to what you know. There's so much out there that is dying because of a lack of literature, a lack of sharing knowledge. It's not like it used to be. Old school, you were learning through apprenticeship with your neighbor. You know, you were working with each other in community and having relationships. And now we need to harness the technology that's out there to do that.
Yeah.
So do it.
Yeah. There, and that's what I find the most encouraging, and especially the last few years, is that people are coming out of the woodworks to educate each other, to say you're not alone. There's a different way to do this. Don't put yourself in a box and refuse to peek out the door. Instead, put the right search terms in, go look, get friends, make community, do brilliant things with your life, and be happy. Okay, so yes.
I was going to say, I have friends that, you know, I'll kind of spur the, like, here, this is how you look for it. This is to open your brain to look. And then they start calling me. And after about the fourth time, I'm like, have you Googled that? You know, please Google before asking me.
Yeah.
Google it.
Yeah.
And then if you can't find it on Google, then ask me. But Google it.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Be proactive. Just because you don't think it's out there doesn't mean it's not out there. So go look for it. Okay, so this is the end of this Braid Girls. Make sure to go check out Trish's channel. And we're still trying to do a live show at 10 a.m. Mountain Time every Friday. So, and there's always the option to chat. I do have the chat open, and sometimes I forget to mention it. That you guys need to go click on the little button that says join chat. But now we're done, so it doesn't matter. So I love you, Trish, and
I love you too, Julie.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.